What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. I'll be keeping the format of the Saturday video the same as last week for the time being, which means you're going to need to stay on top of the news yourself, but as long as you check Twitter, Sleeper, Roto World, etc., you're gonna be fine. In this video, I'll be answering some questions you guys submitted in the comment section, as well as on the website. But before we do that, have to do the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was which wide receiver with at least 30 targets on the season has the highest average separation. The answer is actually Laviska Shenault, and Greg F. was the first to guess that one right. Today's stat: Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson have the two passes completed that have traveled the furthest in the air. Who has the third longest completed air pass of the season? All right, let's go over some questions. And first up, we have Dalvin Cook. Is Dalvin Cook a sell high? Basically, the person is concerned about injuries, right? Basically, every season, we've seen these injuries from Dalvin Cook. While he's at a high value, should they sell high? I don't think we can ever truly call an injured player a sell high. Whenever someone gets hurt, even if they're coming back, their value does go down, especially like this person's concerned with. Dalvin Cook has suffered injuries in the past. This isn't his first time getting hurt for a week. He's done this before. Because of that, I don't see why you would sell him now. You know, they're on bye this week, but he's almost certainly coming back in week 8, where he's going to face the Packers defense that's allowed the most fantasy points to the running back position. So to answer your question, no, even if you were going to get a really nice value on him, I would hang on to Dalvin Cook. He's pretty easily a top 5 running back every week, and those are really hard to come across. He's got a lot of value, and I don't think trading him while he's hurt is a smart move. So no, I'd be hanging on to Dalvin Cook. Next up, someone asked, what is the value on Robert Tonyan? It is actually not Tonyan. I saw that on Twitter. Apparently he came out, he said it's pronounced kind of like a Funyun is. I didn't know that. I don't think anyone really did. So Robert Tonyan, what is his value rest of season? He does pretty nicely to start the year, explodes in week 4, but then did nothing in week 6. So was the explosion just, a pretty lucky game, high variance? Or was it something we should expect moving forward? And week 6 was the variance. I would say that week 6, first of all, he's a tight end. And even guys like George Kittle are going to have down weeks at tight end. It's tight end, okay? Don't expect him to go off every week. But I think that was more injury plus matchup. He left pretty early in the game with an ankle injury. He did return, but obviously it didn't help that it's not like the injury just went away. He had an ankle injury that was limiting him. Also, when he returns, he's still in a very difficult matchup against the Bucs, and then that game was a blowout by the 4th quarter, so he didn't really play as many snaps as he normally would. And again, when you're not playing a lot of snaps and you're in a brutal matchup, that's not good. The ankle injury is something to monitor. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a long-term thing. Should be good to go within these next few weeks back to 100%, but just watch that, I guess. Once he's over that, so once he's good to go from the ankle, I think he is a weekly tight end 1. He is not in that same range of guys like Kelsey and Kittle. Don't be expecting 3 touchdowns every week. But I think in that like mid to low end tight end 1, yeah, I mean, there's really not that many tight ends that are very good. He was playing a decent amount of snaps. He was a very clear end zone target for Rodgers. And given how few quality tight ends there are, I mean, I want to play the ones who are also very talented in their own right and are playing with elite quarterbacks, especially when they already have 5 touchdowns on the season. His touchdown upside is very high. I wouldn't be shocked if he had double-digit touchdowns on the year. And so, yeah, when he comes back, I think we trust Tonyan. One thing is probably a big decision people need to make is all of you got him off free agency, right? And so if you've got a guy like Mike Gesicki, like TJ Hawkinson, and you're like, okay, I like both of them, but I don't want to keep 2 very similar value tight ends. Yes, I would be trading. I would say keep Tonyan. I think that he's got a lot of upside, and I don't think his value on the trade market will be as high as some of these more established players. So if you have another mid-range tight end, maybe trade them and keep Tonyan. And then if you've got like, Waller, Andrews, Kittle, Kelsey, keep those guys and maybe wait for a week where he goes off again, talking about Tonyan there, and then trade him, because I don't think he reaches that like top 5, but I think he is like a mid-range tight end 1. It's just you don't need multiple mid-range tight end 1s. You want to get value. You want to target a team that does not have a good one, that's seen some injuries, that maybe drafted Zach Ertz, hasn't really found a replacement. Target them because you're going to get more value out of that. Next up, what the heck do we do now that Diontae Johnson is back and healthy? Because now they have Claypool and Johnson. It's honestly a great question. And I think that, to be realistic, like, the Steelers are probably the only ones that know for sure what's going to happen here. We know for a fact that Claypool isn't getting benched. Okay, he's broken out. He's going to be on the field. Their 3 wide receiver sets are just going to bump James Washington down to the bench. So they're going to have Claypool and Diontae on the outside. They have Juju in the slot. I'm very interested to see how they distribute the targets once they're all back and healthy, which should be this week against the Titans. I would say week to week, it will still be more matchup dependent. So where is the weakness of the secondary? How can they best exploit that? It's not going to be the exact same distribution every week. However, I would personally, and I think this is the majority of your questions, I would personally continue starting Claypool in fantasy. I do have him. I will be starting him. They are clearly trying to get him the football, especially in the red zone, especially downfield. And those are the 2 things that you want. We see Juju's value a lot down this season, and it was what we talked about to start the year. Yes, he had these touchdowns, but his role wasn't getting him the ball downfield, and touchdowns are still a little bit fluky. So while I do also say Claypool has a nice role in the red zone, you do have to understand that touchdowns have high variance. Obviously, Claypool, we should expect to continue having them moving forward. He had like 1 million touchdowns a few weeks ago. Last week, he had the 1 touchdown. He was stopped at the 1 or 2 yard line 2 times. He could have realistically had 3 touchdowns in that game, which is absolutely insane. The start of the season he would have had having, would it be like 7 touchdowns to start the season? That would have been absolutely nuts if in back-to-back weeks he had 7 touchdowns. But I think the greater point is they are scheming looks to Claypool in the red zone and downfield, which means his floor might be a little bit lower than we're hoping for with guys that we're starting as like wide receiver 2s. That's kind of what he is right now. But the weekly upside more than makes up for that. So continue starting Claypool. As for Diontae, I want to see what they're going to do. No one knows. No one's going to know. If anyone tells you they know what's going to happen, they're lying to you. We don't know how his role has changed. He was getting there off volume. Will the volume be the same? Will it be lower? We don't really know yet. I think we'll have a good test this week against the Titans. But I would rather just keep him on the bench. You've had a replacement because he's been out. So just keep starting that replacement. And then we're just going to watch, see what happens with Diontae, and move forward from there. But again, I would be starting Claypool if you got him. Next up, we've got a trade/start-sit dilemma. This person has Justin Jefferson and T. Higgins on their bench, who've been doing really well, and they keep starting DJ Moore over them, which ends up keep being like the wrong decision. So the question is, do they just bench Moore, keep a lot of depth on the bench, and then start one of Jefferson or Higgins? Obviously, this week can't start Jefferson, so it would be Higgins. Or do they try and move DJ Moore and just pick the best one each week between Jefferson and Higgins? They basically said that's probably the decision that they should be doing, but they're just so attached to DJ Moore because of the value that they gave up to get him in the draft. You probably spent, like a 3rd round pick? It's obviously not easy just benching your 3rd round pick for some guys you likely picked up off free agency, but don't feel like you're alone in feeling attached to a player. It's just called the sunk cost bias. You're looking at what you gave up to get something, and you're saying, I've given so much up to acquire DJ Moore. I have to be starting him because then it's a complete waste. You can't really be looking at it that way. Once you leave the draft, it's only about the players and what they produce. If someone's not producing, it doesn't matter if you took them in the 3rd round or the 7th round. They're not producing. And if you've got a guy on your bench that's doing better than them, start him. And the fact is, Jefferson and Higgins are just playing better right now. So yes, I would consider starting these 2 over Moore. Again, you can't do Jefferson this week, and it's always going to depend on the matchup. But don't feel like you have to start more over these two just because you spent a higher pick to get them. This week, if you want to talk about a start-sit decision between Moore and Higgins, I'll say DJ Moore is projected about 1 point higher than Higgins is, but let's be honest, it's a point. That's a reception for 0 yards or a reception for like 5 yards in a half PPR league. It's nothing to get overly concerned about. If you like Higgins more, go for it. As far as the trade question, that all kind of depends on your league. Is there someone that really needs a quality wide receiver? Well, then, yeah, they're going to place a much higher value on DJ Moore. And since we are confident in starting Jefferson and Higgins moving forward, sure, if you can find a trade partner for DJ Moore, go for it. But that's something I talk about every single week. Look at your bench. Look at these people that you aren't starting, that you now have players who are better than them that you've picked up off free agency or you've acquired in another way, and try and upgrade your starters. So if you need a tight end, maybe you're trading DJ Moore for a tight end. Or if you need an upgraded quarterback, maybe you're trading Moore and a player for a better quarterback. So these are things you need to think about to improve your starting roster. But I can't know because I don't know how your league values Moore, and I don't really know what the rest of your roster looks like. Next question. Are Antonio Brown and Dez Bryant worth ads right now? If you're surprised by this question, you're like, what? I haven't heard those names in a while. Well, it's because the Ravens may sign Dez, and then Antonio Brown comes off his suspension after week 8. So remember, he was suspended for 8 weeks, but he does not have to be on a team for that to count. So this is week 7. After next Sunday, he's going to be good to go to return, and I am very confident that someone is going to offer him a contract. Will he accept it? I don't know. That's up to Antonio Brown. Where will he go? I don't know. That's up to Antonio Brown, but it kind of seems likely that he might sign with Seattle, in which case, yeah, you're going to want to pick up Antonio Brown now. I wouldn't wait until sometime next week because, waivers are going to clear, right? So if you don't pick him up on Saturday or Sunday, now you can't pick them up till Wednesday in a lot of leagues, and so maybe people kind of smart up by then. So I think try and grab them before waivers kind of stop on Sunday at 1 o'clock. I guess it depends on your league. I know in Yahoo you can just do it whenever, but most leagues lock when the games start, and so you can't really pick up Brown if all the players in your starting lineup have already played because then they're locked into your lineup. So try on Saturday and Sunday, pick up Antonio Brown if you have the bench spot. I'd say for Dez Bryant, nah. Unless you're playing like a 16-team league, if he signs with the Ravens, what do we really expect? He's coming off a major injury. It's not like the passing volume is going to be that high. I don't see a scenario where you're starting Dez Bryant this season, but I absolutely see a scenario where you're starting Antonio Brown or you trade him. You pick him up. He signs with Seattle. People are extremely excited, and you flip him for a running back. That's something you could do as well. But I think his value is only going to go up, and so why not add a player whose value is only going up? Someone asked how we should prioritize our benches, and I think that's a really good segue. So we're talking about Antonio Brown as someone that you should make room for on your bench. But this question is okay, how do we construct our bench? Are we looking for high upside players like Antonio Brown? Are we looking for more handcuffs at this point in the season? I think it does depend a little bit. I've seen some of your teams and they're absolutely insane. They're incredibly stacked. And some of you have 4 running back ones and multiple starting caliber wide receivers. And okay, you don't need to add some of these high upside bench players because even if they hit, you might not be starting them. If that's the case, and I know this is only a small percentage of you, but if that's the case, you are looking for handcuffs. So if you just got 4 or 5 running back ones and one of them is Zeke, yeah, you kind of want Pollard because you want to just secure that you're going to maintain this dominant team. But for the vast majority of you, you want upside, right? You want players that can improve your team. So guys like Antonio Brown, we just talked about, Chase Edmonds, Tony Pollard, J.K. Dobbins, these guys that have massive potential if things work out in their way. But I would prefer if I had Pollard and didn't have Zeke, right? I would prefer if I had Pollard and we'll say Alvin Kamara. Well, that leaves my team with a lot of upside because let's say you have Zeke and Pollard. Okay, Zeke goes down. Now your Pollard play works out, but your team didn't actually get any better. If anything, it got a little bit worse. But if you've got Kamara and Pollard and Zeke goes down, well, now, I mean, you're primed for a championship run because you just now have probably 2 top 5 running backs, right? So you want things like that. Like you didn't want Ingram and Dobbins. You wanted just Dobbins or just Ingram because what are the odds that Dobbins works out and Ingram also works out? I mean, almost 0, right? That's what we've seen played out. And so when you've got these handcuff players, it doesn't mean you should be taking your own handcuff. You should be taking other people's handcuff. For wide receiver, it doesn't entirely work out that way because there's no such thing as a handcuff. But wide receiver, you just want players with upside, right? We're not filling our benches with like Cole Beasley. Okay, I know what Cole Beasley, Adam Humphries, I know what they're going to do. And like, I know in a deeper format, they can be viable in the flex in different weeks. But if you've got, really good starting wide receivers and flex options, you're never starting them no matter who gets hurt. I want players who've got a ton of upside. Guys like Jefferson, Higgins, Claypool, like when they break out big, not guys like Cole Beasley. The last question we'll go over today is more of a request. So they said they really liked the wide receiver cornerback matchup segment that we did in the old videos. Could we see that again? Absolutely. So we'll go over some positive, some negative matchups. First up, Terry McLaurin this week versus the Cowboys. Obviously, when you've got a receiver playing the Cowboys, you play them. The Cowboys have allowed the 6th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. They've allowed the 3rd most schedule adjusted fantasy points to opposing wide receiver 1s. McLaurin is a wide receiver 1 this week. You're starting him absolutely everywhere. He's probably going to have a really, really good game. Kenny Golladay is PFF's number 1 wide receiver in terms of wide receiver cornerback matchups. He's got the biggest advantage of the week over Kendall Sheffield. Sheffield has a pathetically low 33.9 defense grade, has allowed a 71% catch percentage and 2.79 yards per route covered. And when he's not matched up with Sheffield, you know what? The rest of the Falcons secondary cannot stop Kenny Golladay. The Falcons have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, and this game's got a really high 55-point total. I think that Terry McLaurin and Kenny Golladay, if you have them, get them into your lineup. I don't really care who else you have. For sits, unfortunately, we have Allen Robinson. Remember, I talked about Robinson in the trade video. I said down the stretch, he's got just an awesome schedule. He just needs to get through these 2 weeks. And I think if you've got solid options, you consider benching Robinson this week. He's going to see a ton of Jalen Ramsey. There will be plays. I don't think Ramsey's going to shadow him the entire game. Could happen. I mean, we don't know what the Rams want to do. But I don't think it'll be the whole game, so he will have some snaps that he's not faced up against him. But he's going to see a lot of Ramsey, and that's not good. I mean, he's like the best corner in the league. I mean, maybe he's not the best, but he's like a top 3 corner in the league. He shuts people down. You don't want guys going up against Ramsey. Especially, the Bears are not projected to score that many points. I think they're at 19.5 right now, but they're projected to score around like 19, 20 points. That's only leaving room for 1 to 2 touchdowns, and so I don't see any sort of upside. Could he have like 4 for 60? Sure, but any sort of upside beyond that, it's probably not going to happen. The next sit is something that we have not said at all this season. I mean, every single week we say, you got Cowboys receivers, put them in the starting lineup. And then this week they play Washington, and you're like, yeah, Washington's a bad team. This is going to be great, right? No, I would actually bench all Cowboys wide receivers. People look at this matchup, like I said, and they get excited, but Washington's allowed the fewest fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, and it's a negative matchup for all 3 wide receiver slots. Like, the slot's not good, both outside spots not good. I mean, they're just good at limiting wide receiver production. And just to make matters worse, I mean, you watched that game, right, on Monday night. Like, did Dalton look good? No. I mean, he looked absolutely dreadful. So do I want any part of this offense right now outside of Zeke? Not really, at least in this matchup. Like, they're going to have better matchups. They're going to perform better at different points. And I do think Dalton will get better as the season goes along. I want them to trade for Winston. I think that'd be a lot of fun to watch. But this week, no. I mean, I'm not starting Lamb or Gallup. I guess you might be forced to start Amari. But if you have a better option, like maybe you have McLaurin and Golladay, and you're like, oh, should I play them over Amari Cooper? Absolutely. And I really would try and find a way to bench all these guys, because it might look like a good matchup. Like I said, it's not. They're very good at limiting wide receiver production. So I hope that that was helpful for you guys. Remember, you need to pay attention to the news, though. I didn't go over everything. There are a few players that we need to keep our eye on, but like I said, if you follow me and Scheffner on Twitter, if you check Roto World, if you check the Sleeper app for their alerts, I think you're going to be fine. You're going to know everything. Just check on like Saturday night and then check at like noon on Sunday. Just try and check. Make sure, especially with COVID, I mean, there could be a team that we think is perfectly fine that all of a sudden tomorrow has a positive test and, you know, it's just mayhem and you just didn't realize it going into the day, but you can't start anyone from that game. So make sure you pay attention. But you guys are watching this video, so you at least somewhat pay attention to the league. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, and how about hitting that like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.